spent in a miserable way.
U.S. News: the problem with Trump's national emergency plan is much bigger than any wall. Los Angeles. When President Trump agreed to end the historically long government shutdown on January the 26th, he said the fiasco he triggered would be repeated in 3 weeks unless Congress came up with a deal on border security that he could accept. Since then, Trump has been floating the idea of ignoring whatever deal lawmakers strike, declaring a national emergency at the southern border and using emergency powers to fund the wall. But defying Congress, members of the House and Senate Appropriations Committees started meeting last week to try to bridge the gap between the $7.3 billion in additional spending Trump has sought for border security, including $5.7 billion for work on a border wall that could cost than the Democrats have proposed, none of it for the wall. They had barely gotten. Presidents cannot dictate where Congress spends tax dollars. They have to persuade. He sounded that theme again at a White House meeting Friday, saying, "We will be looking at declaring a national emergency because I don't think anything's going to happen in the negotiations on Capitol Hill. I don't think Democrats." It's always risky to take this president's statements too seriously, no matter how many times he may repeat them. A case in point, yet Trump has painted himself into such a tight corner on this issue. It seems as if his only way out is to build some version of the wall he promised during his campaign. That may be why the issue is Trump's legal power to declare an emergency. Congress has given some observers, including conservative former Justice Department official John Ewing, point to the 1982 Military Construction Codification Act, which states that when a national emergency requires use of the armed forces, the Defense Department may undertake military construction projects not otherwise authorized by law that are necessary to support such use of the armed forces. That strains the bigger problem is that Trump could set a precedent for future presidents to usurp Congress' constitutional power over the federal purse by treating political disputes as national emergencies. Presidents cannot, regardless of Trump's posturing. Lawmakers should craft a deal that addresses the humanitarian problems caused by the backlog in asylum requests and the surge in families seeking protection. They should also use
raindrop, drop top, top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.